First of all, the latest lines coming out. Obama's meeting with the National Security Agency advisors. John Kerry about to speak. Does it look like to you like the U.S. is fast-tracking plans for intervention?
Well, I think that they're making it clear that despite the vote in the UK Parliament, the United States is ready to work with other willing partners to indicate to the world that the use of chemical weapons is unacceptable. And I think that's as it should be. We cannot have the international community agreeing that chemical weapons are banned and their use unacceptable and then not take any action.
Well, can the U.S., it seems like the U.S. may be about to almost go it alone. Can the U.S. do that?
I don't think the U.S. is going to go it alone, and we're also hearing that Russia is asking for the results of the UN weapons inspectors report. I think that's an important statement. It means that Russia is not ruling out expressing, along with other members of the Security Council, that Syria cannot take this action. Now, Russia, along with China, are both signatories to the Chemical Weapons Convention, and under that convention you have certain obligations, and that is to ensure that you're not abetting or assisting or encouraging other nations to use chemical weapons. And we could look at this as, if China and Russia, knowing that chemical weapons were used, and there seems to be quite good evidence that it was the Assad regime, how can they sit back and not take part in a UN Security Council vote saying that action must be taken against Syria? I think now the international community, instead of sort of looking over the tea leaves about the UK vote and what the US is going to be doing, I think we should be putting the spotlight on Russia and China to say, if you're going to be a member of the United Nations, there are certain obligations, and that's to identify threats to peace, but also to do something about it.
But surely before you can put the spotlight on Russia and China, don't you have to wait for the results of the UN inspectors to come out? I guess that will be the Russian comeback, to your point, is you've got to wait and see what the UN inspectors say to have definitive proof.
Absolutely, but that's the point. The inspectors should be back tomorrow. The report should be coming back early next week or over the weekend possibly, but then the spotlight needs to be on Russia and China to say, all right, now you're part of a key player in the international community, and along with that comes certain obligations, and are you going to step up to the plate and take on your obligation?
That's assuming that the report says that chemical weapons were used. And has the U.S. jumped the gun a little bit in saying, almost already committing to action and intervention before we've had the results?
Well, listening to all of your reports, it's clear that the Assad regime has used chemical weapons before, and all of the indications of independent observers who have seen the videotape, they're pretty conclusive. But let's wait for the weapons inspectors to come out with their report. We also have some evidence of an intercept that indicates that the Assad regime was behind it. We now have this absolutely devastating panorama report out of the UK on an incendiary device used on a playground in Aleppo. And that was dropped by a winged aircraft. Clearly that's not going to be the rebels. So that shows the depth to which the Assad regime will move in order to win over these rebels and civilians and children.
And what happens if, a minute ago I was talking to our correspondent in the UN. He said we're at the stage now where they're sending samples to laboratories. That could take days, possibly even weeks, but by the time they've reached their conclusions, it's been presented to Ban Ki-moon. Ban Ki-moon has to brief members of the Security Council. Can the Obama administration afford to wait for weeks now?
Well, I think that's a very good question, and it depends on whether they have other evidence that is as compelling as what the weapons inspectors will come out with. In other words, there are other means of ascertaining whether chemical weapons have been used or not. The weapons inspectors are one, and they're a very important one. But I think there is a bit of a sense of urgency, because the longer we wait, the longer this sort of the media, the public lose attention on this. And we have to remember that there are other countries standing on the sidelines watching. One of the other non-signatories to the Chemical Weapons Convention is North Korea. What signal does this send to North Korea? We should also be aware that this is not just about Syria, because we have Iranian and Hezbollah agents. One was just sentenced in Indonesia last week, that have been operating in various countries, in Argentina, in Bulgaria, in Cyprus, and therefore it's not a matter of just being, we don't want to get involved in Syria. This is Syria connected with Hezbollah, connected with Iran, and they're not just acting in that region, they are acting globally. And when they appear to be given a green light that they can act with impunity and there are no consequences, this can only spell trouble.
All right, thanks so much for your thoughts.